Welcome back to Minimal Movement, the series where I try to play games while pressing the least amount of buttons possible. This episode, we'll be attempting to beat New Super Mario Bros. U while pressing as little buttons as possible. My goal today is to press less than 99 buttons. Last episode, we played New Super Mario Bros. Wii, and we got a surprisingly low number of button presses. If you would like to watch this video, you can check the description below. Anyways, the rules for this are simple. If we press any of these buttons that are physically pressable, I will add a point to our final counter. We have 3 choices of controllers to play on. We have the gamepad, a Wiimote, or a Pro controller. The gamepad has a touch screen that can place blocks on the screen, which we might be needing, but we cannot shake the controller to jump. The Wiimote has motion controls and allows us to spin jump with them, but it does have a D-pad, making us have to add a point to our counter every time we change directions. But I am able to hold on to the button for as long as I want. The Pro controller has a joystick like the gamepad, but doesn't have motion controls at all, making people have to use this setup back in the day to play certain games. And for the people saying I should use the nunchuck with the Wiimote, but the Wiimote will be the best option to play with. So with all that out of the way, we can start the game. The title screen is pretty normal, but since we're using the Wii U, the gamepad will allow us to get through the main menu and the file selection screen without needing to press a button. We can also change back to our Wiimote by tapping this button on the gamepad. Now we're going to have to press right for our first button press of the game, and then we actually need to enter the level, which does use a button press. By the way, I'll add some score to our final counter since we cannot enter any levels without pressing a button. This means that we are now at a total of 20 button presses if we take the fastest route to beat the game. However, this route may change if we run into some trouble, so if the counter suddenly gains or loses score, you'll know why. As you can see, I'm walking to the right. As I said earlier, I'm allowed to hold onto a button for as long as I want, and this is a perfect example of this strategy. As long as I do not let go of this button, or press the button opposite to it, it'll count as only one button press. Now, even with this one button press, I'm still very limited in movement, especially since I cannot stop moving, because I want to get the most out of my first button press. After a while, I realized that I can tap on this squirrel carrying an item to make it drop that item. When this happens, an acorn will fall down and Mario will become a flying squirrel Mario. If you shake the controller, Mario will perform a really high spin jump, and if you shake again while Mario is airborne, he'll gain even more height and forward momentum. We can use this extra height to jump over pretty much everything in this stage, making it pretty easy to beat. Since we're still holding onto the right button, we're able to go to 1-2 pretty easily. We can spin jump at the beginning to get through this pipe leading us to the underground. There are a lot of piranha plants and Goombas in here, so we will have to be careful while navigating through this cave. This level has a secret exit to skip the rest of World 1, which I found by staying at the top of the screen for as long as I could. Once we make it to the top of the level, we can walk along this area to reach a pipe that we can enter by letting go of right and pressing down. After we make it through this pipe, we'll be able to use the forward momentum from our scroll jump to reach the flagpole and get our well-earned 1-up. After this level, we see a path opening up for us, and since it starts downwards, we can go to this secret level by using our previous button press. 1-blooper starts with a pipe on the right side of the screen. We were able to fly over to it using our acorn suit. When we exit the pipe, we see more water than I'd like to see. I tried using blocks so we could walk over these pipes so we wouldn't get stuck, but it didn't work for too long. I also tried getting a second player so we can pop their bubble with the gamepad when they died. And it actually worked, until we reached the next half of the stage. Yeah, this is going to be at least 50 button presses. I had to change our route a little bit so we wouldn't have to play through this level. I went through the normal exit in 1-2 to correct our error, but this time we needed to press up instead of down to enter the pipe. Since we're holding both right and up now, we are able to go straight to World 1's tower, which is a very interesting level. It starts out with us wanting to go to the right, but nope, that is a soft lock. Instead, we need to climb these cogs to reach the section before the checkpoint flag, then move to the left, and wall jump off this wall to go past the flag, but don't move too far because there are cogs above us that we'll need to climb on. We can get pushed by these cogs, so we can get closer to the climbable side, and when we get there, we'll be able to get pushed along by these cogs while barely not getting squished. When we reach the top of these cogs, we'll be able to spin jump through this tiny little hole and reach the final spinning cog that'll take us to this door that we immediately walk in because we haven't let go of up yet. This door takes us to our first boss fight against Boom Boom. This guy will move over to you and try to deal damage, but if you spin jump while he's approaching you, this battle can be completed pretty easily. If you change your controller to the gamepad before the battle ends, you can skip a part of the next dialogue, but it comes at a price of 3 button presses. After this level, we get hit with a "would you like to use Miiverse" prompt, and that takes about 7 button presses. But while we're still using the gamepad, we can skip 3 of these by tapping on the screen. I'm not sure why only 3 of these can be skipped using the gamepad, but we can also use the joystick on the gamepad to go to the next level for free. 1-3 is pretty easy. I realized that we can make Mario stay in the air for long periods of time by placing these blocks right below him while flying. I wasn't the greatest at this, but it's such an odd skill to have that I'm willing to bet that I can master by the end of this challenge. I had to press right to get to our next level and up to skip the baby Yoshi standing in our way. 1-4 was also pretty easy. I stayed close to the top by using the blocks and made it to the flagpole. Now I had to let go of right and press left to get to World 1's castle. Making it through this castle wasn't too difficult. I had to make sure I didn't get too low to the ground because there were still Potaboos jumping up at me as I made my way through this level. Since I was still holding up, I was able to open the door immediately when I got into range. In this door, we have to run up these stairs and go into this cannon. The range to enter the cannon is pretty small, so I had to place blocks in the way so I would be able to go through. After going through this cannon, we get to fight our first Koopaling of this challenge. This boss is Lemmy Koopa, and he'll throw bombs at you during this fight. Unlike Boom Boom, the Koopalings will not go to the edges of the battlefield, so if you accidentally hit this wall on the right, you're kind of stuck. There wasn't much room for error, so if I needed to move, it would have to be a one-time thing. In the end, I was able to successfully defeat Lemmy and move on to World 2. After I saved my game, I moved to the gamepad so I would be able to go to 2-1 for free. 2-1 was as easy as I would have expected. I had to fly around and just avoid any kind of danger. But then Toad gets robbed and makes us go through 4 button presses so we can skip his dialogue. Anyways, to get to 2-3, we will need to press up and right. We also need to press down to get into this pipe at the beginning of the level. After we exit this pipe, we're sent into the darkness, where we can fly over mostly everything like the previous levels, but there are some fire bros in our way. Once we make it to the end, we can go through this pipe using the right press we had before going into the level, and complete 2-3. By pressing up, we can move on to World 2's tower. This level starts off with us needing to enter this pipe, and since we are still holding right, we can easily go through. After we exit this pipe, we'll need to stop so we can get through this small gap. After that, I tried to get Mario on the left side of this platform so we could hopefully get pushed to the left by this moving block. It didn't really work out, but I noticed that every time one of these blocks would shrink, Mario would fall down the side he was on, making him slightly move towards that direction every time a block was used. I was able to move Mario to the left side of this block, so I decided to let the block push him like I wanted. And he was able to make it past this section where he would have normally needed to move to the left to progress. This trick also works on World 1's tower, so we can remove a point from our final score. After flying past these blocks to enter this pipe, we were on to the next room. We had to move through this tiny gap so we can make it through these moving blocks. I got on top of this block by letting it push me forward, but the block above me was kind of worrying. Every time I would move these blocks, I would get squished by the one above the horizontally moving block. I realized I can stop this by using the gamepad, so I stopped the block and then moved the other blocks so I can make a path for myself to get to the next area. This area presents us with some blocks in the middle and a ceiling above us. We would need to move to the left to get through the door. Or do we? We can move these blocks out of the way and make the right one stay in place until we need it to push us. When I reached the top of the area, I let the block push us over so Mario could make it to the room where the door was. And we were successful. We can now fight Boom Boom, which has pretty much the same strategy as World 1, so we can defeat him pretty easily. After we save, we can go back to the gamepad and carefully grab this acorn while avoiding the enemies, and make it over to this stage up here that has a secret exit. 2-4 was pretty difficult because these spikes kept throwing their spike balls, but I could easily break them by using the gamepad. When we reach this area, we can move over to this wall by pressing left and then pressing down to slide under this area where we can find a hidden pipe. We can reach the flagpole after that and reach World 2's secret level. This level was pretty easy and I was able to fly over the entire map to reach the flagpole. After that was over with, we had to save again and move on to World 5. 5-1 was easy enough. I just hopped around this area and made it to the flagpole. I had to press down and right to get to our next level, 5-3. This level has a lot of bram balls, and some of them are camping at the top of the screen, so our tactic will not really work here. Instead, I stunned them with the gamepad and flew over while they were unable to move. In the final stretch of the level, I intentionally got hit so I would be able to have less movement when spin jumping. I did this because I would have jumped over all the platforms if I was in the acorn suit, but since I'm not, I can jump below in the platforms without worrying about jumping too high. This is also clearly possible with Big Mario. Our next stop is World 5's tower. My plan was to slide over to this block and get the acorn inside. After getting the acorn, I would go through this pipe and continue the level as normal. But there's one problem. This is a snake block level, and it looks kind of impossible, but hear me out. What if we just didn't use the snake block? Yeah, we can just kind of fly over everything and reach the pipe connecting to the next area. For the second half of this level, we can just stand still and spin jump to the top, but we do have to use our second jump to move a little bit to the right, and we can use our little trick to move Mario towards the door. The boss battle is just a normal Boom Boom fight, but this time he's big, which means that he is much easier to hit. So after we beat Boom Boom, I switched to the gamepad once again and moved to the next area in World 5. The first level we go to is World 5's Ghost House, and I decided to keep using the gamepad for this one. I jumped normally for the first time to get to this door, and this brought us to a section where we are on a platform slowly moving up, while boos are watching us from both sides. My plan was to spin around the joystick like Mario Party's tug-of-war, so the boos wouldn't even get a chance to move closer to me. When Mario reached the top of the map, I made him jump over to this area so he wouldn't get squished. After going through the door, I switched my controller back to the Wiimote and finished the level. And yes, it takes less button presses to change from gamepad to Wiimote opposed to Wiimote to gamepad. Our next stage requires a right press to enter. Flight of the Parabeetles. This is by far one of the hardest levels in Mario Bros. History, and I'm about to complete it while pressing the least amount of buttons possible. During this level, I tried to be careful so I wouldn't fall off the map, but I got a little bit too close to the top of the map and I took some unnecessary damage because I didn't wait for the screen to move. I had to use my short spin jumps to reach one of the Parabeetles so I can get to the top of the screen. Once I made it to this platform, I saw a block that might contain an acorn, so I decided to let the screen move me over to it so I could hit the block and grab it. It actually worked out well, and I was able to continue with the level. I eventually made it to the final section of the level, and I pressed right once again so I can make it through this pipe. I could have maybe beat this level without pressing right, but it would have been really difficult to make it past this bullet bill going downwards, and make it to the top of the red pipe before it showed up. After I saved, I went back to the gamepad and made my way to 7-1. This level has a lot of blocks building up as you progress. The first section gave me some trouble, but I was eventually able to complete it, as well as go through this pipe with one right press. The next section gave me a lot of trouble since we kind of go off the rails a little bit. And the ending has all these piranha plants, making it pretty much impossible to keep the acorn suit. 7-3 has us jump on all these bullet bills, and since I'm still holding right from the last level, I pretty much have to keep progressing while trying to dodge these bullet bills. The last section of this level was pretty scary since we had like 5 bullet bills on our screen at once, but it was definitely possible. We had to press up to make it to our next level, which is World 7's tower. This level starts with some moving blocks, and we can hit this block and juggle the acorn over to us with a gamepad. After that, we can enter the pipe. This pipe leads us to a level filled with moving blocks. We can pull off a couple of tricks here and there to make it closer to the top, and we can also use our block strategy to go closer to the left side of the map. This is useful, but it does take a lot of time. I also needed to make sure to stun these fire bros so I didn't get hit during this stage. We reach a section over here eventually, and we do have to use a left press, but the rest of the level is pretty fine, since we just had to move onto this moving wall while still pressing left, and then wall jump off this final wall to reach the door. Instead of fighting Boom Boom, we're fighting Kamek this time. And in the middle of this battle, I noticed that if I stand on 10 blocks in a row using the gamepad, you could unlock Super Boost mode, which allows the gamepad to deal damage to the boss, making this battle pretty easy. After saving, we can now switch back to the gamepad and move on to World 7's Ghost House. This level starts off with a door, so we're obviously going to have to press up to progress. The next area has another door, but we can use our up press again to move on. This door leads us to a box with boos spinning around. We can dodge these boos by carefully spin jumping around them, but it's definitely scary jumping around these guys, since there's basically no room for error. After a while, we're able to reach this door that'll allow us to move back to this room. The next thing we'll have to do is reach the door at the top, and to do that, we can use our magic block tactic that moves us to the left. This will reveal a staircase that we will not be using. Once we make it through this door, we see these purple poles that we can easily just fly over to make it to the next door. After exiting this door, we can now go to the right side of the screen and move to the left from all the way over here. Pressing left was the only option because I was running out of time. And unfortunately, this section makes us press left 2 times and right 1 time, making our counter go to 77. We're getting dangerously close to 100, but I believe that we can still reach our goal of 99. After completing the ghost house, we can move on to World 7's castle, which we have to press down to walk to. This castle has moving platforms and a few tight spaces, but nothing compared to some of the stuff we've done during this video. There were some hammer bros, but you can make them fall over by using the gamepad. Overall, this level was pretty easy, and now it's time to fight the boss. Getting to the cannon was easy, but fighting Ludwig was not. He'll fly into the air and probably not even give you a chance to defeat him, so I had to make a plan. I built up my star meter so I could unlock super boost mode before I went into the cannon, but I made sure not to finish the star meter so I could use it in battle. Once I used the cannon to fight Ludwig, the fight was on. I finished the star meter and grabbed the star power with the gamepad. I tapped Ludwig until he fell into his shell, and I kept jumping above him so I wouldn't take damage. The second he got out of his shell, I started dealing damage to him again, but he took away my acorn suit. Now I was unable to jump high. My boost power also ran out, so I was going to have to be forced to jump on Ludwig the next time he went up to me. And wow, that actually worked. While I was editing this, I realized that I could actually beat this level without taking any damage. And then afterwards, instead of saving, I pressed don't save, and with the left press of the Wiimote, I was able to make it to the next level. Now it was time for the airship level. This level has a giant Bowser hand trying to crush you, and I didn't want to get in the way of that. So I decided to just not move for a while until I noticed that the blocks from the gamepad can just stop the hand entirely. This made the first section pretty easy, but the second section, not so much. Bowser now punches the ground and breaks the entire area he punches at. But if we stay behind where he's punching, he'll not be able to damage us. I realize now that this level just has Bowser punch certain areas instead of following Mario. The next section has us use a motion-controlled platform that'll move to the left and to the right depending on what direction we're turning the Wiimote. This section requires some patience, but it isn't really too difficult. After a while, we can press up and go through this pipe. After going through, we see another pipe, but this time we will need to press down to go through. This pipe will launch us to a battle against Bowser Jr., and this battle is actually pretty easy as long as we get Super Boost mode. Bowser Jr. doesn't have much break time after he takes damage, so we can easily just keep tapping on him until he's defeated. Now it's time for World 8. 8-1. This level has fireballs falling from above, but when I went up to the source, they just disappeared. I don't know why this happened, but it made this level a whole lot easier than it should have been. I also decided to not take the secret exit because the secret level is terrible. 8-2 is a level a lot like last episode's 5-4, except this time, I am going to completely ignore the fact that this platform even exists. I was able to fly over everything for half the level, and if I couldn't do that, I could just place blocks down so I wouldn't touch the lava. When I made it to the end of the level though, I had to press right to enter this pipe. The level was over after that, and I was able to collect my well-earned 1-up. 8-3. This level was way easier than I thought it would be. I was able to navigate through this level because at this point in the game, I have mastered the gamepad techniques. I could use my Wiimote on one hand and use the gamepad in the other to let Mario step on these blocks. I feel like that's an achievement that not that many people can say they have, or even want. Anyways, World 8's castle is not what I would have expected. I entered through this pipe using the right press I've been using for the past 2 levels, and when I exited, I saw something terrifying. This platform moves from the left to the right depending on where you're tilting the controller, slowly. I had to be really careful when I played this level because if even one enemy or coin got onto this platform, it would stop moving. Oh yeah, and did I mention that lava is rising? I had to be really careful because if I had too many coins on this platform, it would definitely not be good. I had a plan though. If I tapped some of the enemies with the gamepad, they would jump away or fall beside my platform. I could do the same thing with coins also. So when I tried doing this method, I was successful immediately. I started progressing like I could actually press buttons, but then I reached these blocks. My first thought was to hit this P-switch over here, but then I realized that I could just break these blocks by spin jumping. The rest of this level was pretty difficult, but I used the strategy I did before where I just tap on enemies with the gamepad and hopefully get lucky enough where I can actually make it to the end of the level. And I'm pretty happy to say that I did indeed get lucky enough to reach the exit, although this level was very difficult. Now it is time to save one last time. The final battle. I was prepared for whatever was thrown at me. I was ready, and I believed that I could beat this entire level without pressing a single button, just like how I thought I could beat Splatoon while being a squid the least amount of times possible. If you want to see how that went down, you can find it in the description below. Also, don't forget to subscribe if you enjoyed this video and want to see more like it. Anyways, this level starts off with a face-off against Bowser Jr. In this battle, Bowser Jr. will try to damage you by ground pounding you. And this is pretty easy to dodge if you play it safe like I did by camping at the top of the screen like I did for some other levels. After going through this door, we get sent into a room with a checkpoint flag and a giant door that leads us to our final battle. After we enter the door, we get sent into this long hallway where we have to dodge these fireballs. This section wasn't too difficult, but I had to be careful so I wouldn't get hit by any of the fireballs. After this hallway, we get sent to a room that has Bowser. And if you watched my last video, you would know that this section was pretty easy to complete, since we could just jump over him. After that, Bowser disappears into the abyss and gets magic thrown on him. I wonder what will happen to him. After we go up these stairs, I started building up my star meter for the big fight. After I got into the cutscene zone, I waited until Bowser showed up as a big Bowser, as always. In this fight, Bowser Jr. will try to damage you with his clown car once again. But this time, we can actually enter his clown car and deal damage to Bowser by pressing a button. This took hours to pull off, and I tried so many strategies as well. I tried bringing in extra players and giving them stars, but when I would let them into the fight, the stars already ran out. I tried giving them fire flowers, and I think you can guess how that might have turned out. It seemed like nothing was gonna work, but one strategy out of all of them I thought might work the best, but it was going to take forever to pull off. What if I used my magic blocks to hit Bowser Jr. to enter his clown car? I thought this might work because in Mario Maker, you could just jump into clown cars easily, but in this game, we don't get that kind of luxury. The clown car will just bounce us off if it lands directly on us. But what if it didn't? What if the clown car landed off-centered to us? I tried it, and it worked. I was now in the clown car flying upwards since I was still pressing up from earlier. Now as I said, we have to press a button to deal damage to Bowser, but this technically is not true. If we shake the Wiimote, we can use the ground pound Bowser Jr. tried using on us, meaning that we can damage Bowser and get into Bowser Jr.'s clown car for free. Now we just have to actually do it. I had to get really lucky with my first hit, since Bowser doesn't really like moving towards us too much. But eventually, we smacked his head with the clown car. He pushed me off to the side, and I decided to fly away from him. I thought my strategy of camping the top of the screen might work for this, and it definitely did. When Bowser started rolling around his shell, I was just floating above the map while he tried jumping for me. During this section, I was jumping on boost blocks in preparation for my next attack. When the time came for me to attack, I once again attacked Bowser Jr. and hopped in his clown car. I waited once again for Bowser to come closer, and I hit the second shot. All that was left to do was repeat what I just did one last time, but I messed up. I got hit by Bowser Jr. twice, and I was barely alive. I had to get really lucky if I wanted to do this, so I flew up like normal and waited for Bowser to come closer. He lunged towards us, and I shook my Wiimote one last time to finish the job. Oh my gosh, I just did it! Oh, finally! That took so long to do! And with that, New Super Mario Bros. U has been completed in only 91 button presses. That is less than our goal, so I'd say that this is a clear win. Thanks for watching. This took me like 4 days to actually beat the game like this, so please subscribe, and yeah, that's all I got.